And our second fifth grade student of the month is Chloe Pietropaula. And these are the words Chloe's nominating teacher writes. Chloe is nominated as a fifth grade remote learning student of the month. Attitude is everything. When I reflect on my students in the 2019-2020 school year, Chloe possesses all of the qualities of a mountain lion. Throughout the year, Chloe has demonstrated an eagerness to learn and the leadership to develop relationships within the classroom. Chloe's respect for her teachers is undeniable. Additionally, her respect for her classmates is demonstrated through the empathy and friendship she offers. Chloe is self-motivated and always aspires to do well in academics. She takes ownership for her learning as she seeks to understand her errors in an attempt to improve in the future. She accepts her mistakes as an opportunity to grow and learn. During distance learning, Chloe continued to strive for academic excellence, demonstrating her ability and responsibility. She was often one of the first students online and participated on all of our Google Meets. Relationships are important to Chloe, and she has stayed connected with her teachers and her peers. I am so very proud and honored to recommend Chloe for Student of the Month. A student with this much enthusiasm to learn will achieve greatly no matter what the circumstances. Congratulations, Chloe. And then our sixth grade student of the month is Casey Prakowiak. Casey is nominated as a sixth grade remote learning student of the month. Casey continually shows raw behaviors both in the classroom and now during virtual learning. She is a responsible student that shows achievement by doing her best work at all times. During the school year, Casey respected her classmates by always helping others and working well with a team of learners. She persevered through challenging assignments and took ownership by checking in or asking for help whenever needed. Casey's work ethic and motivation are commendable. Congratulations, Casey.
And our next sixth grade student of the month is Riley Thayer. Riley Thayer is nominated as a sixth grade remote learning student of the month. Riley is deserving of the Student of the Month for spring 2020. She shows great responsibility and ownership by submitting her assignments on time daily and checking in with questions or clarification. Riley shows achievement by going above and beyond the expectation of her assignments, always striving to do her best. Riley demonstrates respect, especially in her positive comments and emails in Google Classroom. Congratulations, Riley. And our last sixth grade student of the month is Bridget Heron. Bridget Heron is nominated as a sixth grade remote learning student of the month. Bridget consistently displays raw expectations. She demonstrates respect to her classmates and her teachers. Bridget is consistently showing her achievement by participating in class, completing assignments on time, and always working hard to succeed. Bridget shows great ownership and responsibility by checking in with her teachers when she has questions about her work and also clarifying assignments before they are due. Bridget is a deserving student for this award. Congratulations, Bridget.
All right. Kudos to all our little ones and big ones that did such an excellent job during the virtual remote learning during the school closure. And thank you to all the parents and guardians that assisted, and in some cases, siblings. And of course, thank you to all the faculty and staff and administration for their support during that time. Okay. All right.
Dr. Davis, I just have a question. Just, is there any way to stream this in another way for those who are locked out of the meeting?
Right.
Just tell them that the presentations will be on the website.
On the website. I mean, I don't necessarily have a way to make another Zoom.
Right. Okay. I'll just respond to that, that question.
Someone asked if there's no first grade. I guess that depends on.
Yeah, so yeah, the nominations were open, so it didn't have to be inclusive of all students. And there will be some next session for the different grade levels, just as the high school and the junior high will be represented next month and then the following night. Oh, looks like someone's got us up on YouTube.
Right. That's what I'm going to respond back to this individual.
I'm trying to pull up the comments. Sorry. All right, so I'm going to move forward. We could pause for a moment so everybody who can see it. I don't know if there's a way. I mean, I can send a messenger out.
Andy, I don't know how many people are blocked out, but typically quite a few people do leave after the Student of the Month presentations. So we could see if the room opens up a little bit now that that's done, and let some more people in.
Yeah, I'm watching it. The 100's pretty strong. I think people are interested in what's going to happen for the reopening plan or where we stand. I was excited because we got to 99. I did not know it maxed out. Who we'll take a 5-minute pause here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look who's running the YouTube channel. If you could unmute yourself, because I'm assuming you're here. Jacob X. So what do people see when you're running that? Okay. Do you mind if I send out an email blast? Because I could do a messenger blast to the. All right. I'm going into the chat to find your channel here. Yep, I found it. I'm about this. So I'm sending your whole channel out to the district. Email blast.
Love it, love it.
Sorry, I have to move my screen for a second.
You have the ability to screen record if anybody's on their phone as well.
Sorry, you can see how long it takes me to send the messenger blast. The board. I don't think there's any reason why, because you can run it anyway. You can everybody turn off their phones because they're all going to bing in 2 seconds. I'm going to pause 2 more minutes. Oh, I should have told them to send an email. I should have sent the email address.
Yeah, Dr. Davis, they said
Yeah,
if
Mrs.
they
Lane.
do have any questions that they could email me. But you normally go over that when we get to the public portion of the meeting.
Oh yeah, so it'll be streaming. Good, perfect.
Right.
I don't want to send another email blast. Someone's out on the beach.
My backyard, not the beach.
Oh, you got the screen going on? Okay. I'm going to wait until 7:30, then we'll get started again. Sorry.
It's an actual real picture. I live in West New York on the waterfront. It's my backyard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So now we're getting to presentations. We have several presentations tonight. The first of which is our semi-annual district school safety and data report. This is the closure for the 2019-2020 school year. If there are any investigations that are currently happening, they'll get reported during the 2021 school year. So if you don't know, and welcome anybody who's on YouTube, if you don't know SSDS, the overview, the school safety data system's been in place for a while. It used to be called EVVRS, and there were changes several years ago. Continues with some of the different things that refer to the anti-bullying Bill of Rights and self-assessments, the HIB grades, and different things that we as school districts need to report. And there's lots of things that fall on the list, all the way from arson to weapons, HIB alleged, HIB confirmed if there were a fight, kidnapping. And then they deleted items such as burglary and firework offenses. They fell into other categories, and there was some redundancy in how that's reported. Of course, there's been a lot of conversation about school safety and keeping our kids safe during the school closure. Obviously, board policy and regulations make a difference. We have a school safety plan and there's school procedures that go through. Professional learning, we are a school, so making sure the faculty and staff, as well as the students, are aware of different pieces to keep them support. We're working on positive behavior supports district-wide. There's DARE that we work with our local law enforcement. There's some things that some people might not know in regards to food and clothes pantries that we offer in both the schools. I will note that during the school closures, the items that were part of the pantries were included in the distribution to families that were partaking in the meal distribution during that time. They were on top of what needed to be included in those items. So we wanted to make sure any of those items were shared. Growth mindset continues, roar, as we saw in the nominations from Mansion. And of course, we hosted a challenge day. We were going to host a challenge day this year that was supported through the Teachers Association, but that was canceled due to the closure. We're hopeful that we'll be able to do one this year. So part of what needs to be reported to the board includes the incidents. So when you look at all those incidents that are there, just in general, the reports, incidents that were confirmed, there were 3 at Mansion and then 8 at the senior high. Other incidents that led to removal, in-school suspension, or out of school suspension, 7 at Mansion, and then 65 at the junior, senior high. HIB alleged going across, 0 in Haviland, 4 at Mansion, 3 at the junior, senior high. HIB confirmed, there were none at Haviland and none at Mansion, and 1 at the junior, senior high. And then HIB programs relate to the trainings that occur and the supports that occur within the classroom setting. So there's lots of different things that were being implemented across the classrooms. And that's reported based on the guidelines from the Department of Education. We include the January reports that are part of this through June, where incidents confirmed. The other incidents that were leading to removal. I don't want to read to everybody because I'm going to be talking a lot tonight. The HIBs confirmed, and then the programs. So that was in the second half of the year. You can see there was more programs and trainings that were happening in the beginning part of the year, but then there was some support as the school year closed. This gets reported in a full report, so I will go into detail with this one. Talks about training programs that were offered at Haviland, Mansion, and then the junior, senior high. When you add up these numbers, it's 135, but then there's also another one that was part of a district-wide training. The incidents total, so if you were to look at the first part of the school year and then the second part, 21 incidents throughout the district. 4 were reported under violence, 2 under vandalism, 9 under substances, 1 under weapons. There were 15 alleged HIB cases and 5 HIBs confirmed. And then other incidences that led to removal. So there was none occurring at Haviland, 11 at Mansion, then 137 at the junior, senior high. You can tell that these numbers don't add up, so you'd have to go back to the first slide. It's not mandatory to report each of the individual, although we do track them as a school and as a district to make sure that we can put supports in place to train and support the students and then also the staff members. Okay. The room size is closing, so I am adding people. Emergency drills, we have fire drills 1 per month, and then security drills, it's mandated 1 per month as well. They occur when school is in session and there's students within the building. And we also do emergency school bus evacuation drills twice a year for all students. Sometimes you say, well, we're a busing district, and why would you need them? Well, you need them because we also go on field trips. So students need to know how to evacuate the buses in case of emergency. They're all done in accordance with code. They take place in school. They do a front door, a back door, and they talk about the window exits and also the roof hatches. They don't actually exit through the windows or the roof. And hopefully we never will have to. Okay. Mandates, I wouldn't call them new, although there are mandatory in regards to Alyssa's law. So Alyssa's law comes into play now, and we do have panic systems that are in all the buildings in key fobs that go throughout, and we also have silent alarm buttons that are located in specific places as directed by the code. Our key fob system is actually goes above and beyond. Memorandum of understanding, we do have an agreement with local law officials in regards to reporting. They do have access to our cameras in case of emergency. They do not stream them when we're not, but they do have the ability to turn that on if emergency was to occur. School safety specialist, we'll be appointing a new one in August. Some of the things for commitment to school safety, the independent alarm, those alarm systems are in all schools. It's consistent throughout. We do have an automatic panic system, and this year we were able to bring it to the high school, so it is available in all schools. The faculty and staff training includes volunteers and students and teachers, so they continue with that. We have a HIB coordinator training, one administrator that we'll have another administrator trained over the 2021 school year, and then we'll have a HIB specialist training for 2 administrators as we appoint new people into different positions. We are getting some additional walkie-talkies at both Haviland and Mansion, and then interior and exterior cameras for all schools. We want additional items, so I don't want to go into much detail because one thing about safety and security, we have a plan, but you don't necessarily want to share all pieces of the plan because then you start to lose some of that safety piece. And we're adding guest ID badges. As we move forward with potential plans for the opening of the school year, guests and visitors will be limited most likely at all district locations as we move forward. Some of these things and some of the, we'd like to get additional cameras and additional supports. There's monies that are available, but they've been put on hold from the Department of Education and the state. So that when that opens, and if it opens, we'll apply. We've been ready to apply really for a year. And then there's some references here in regards to, it goes back to the Department of Ed and some additional pieces there. So now if the board has any questions in regards to this report. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. We'll present this again in January. One of the things that everyone should be aware of, the self-evaluation is very important. We do it based on the schools and then also as a district to consider, continue to improve upon the supports that are happening within the schools. Okay. So from that, I'm just going to make a comment in regards to the New Jersey CUSAC report. It was reported to the board earlier in the year in regards to the standings from the State Department. We went through an interim review, which is part of the process when you fall below areas. That was done remotely. They have our initial numbers, and we have some additional comments back to the State Department, and they'll be continue that review process. And once that's finalized, the final numbers will be reported to the board. There are pieces to our correction plan and action plan that won't be corrected until September, at which point some of those numbers will actually increase again. And I've been talking about that, and we've talked about that as a board for a while. So we know now that if we have to conduct a board meeting remotely again in the future, that we need to think of other avenues such as YouTube. But I'm going to be moving on to show you our Thoughtexchange. And I think that's why, there's more people. I sent out a blast to the full school community on Monday, reminding people that, one, there was still time to complete the preliminary parent survey in regards to the reopening of schools and what that plan or plans look like. And then I also shared that we will be sharing the Thoughtexchange as well as the result of those surveys tonight. We won't be going into detail about the reopening plan. And the board, we've discussed potentially having an August 5th meeting, and we'll talk about that when we get back into that section of the meeting. So we can present that reopening plan in a public forum, as opposed to just sending out a blast or a tweet or attaching a document. We think it's really important for the community members and the stakeholders to know some of the decisions and most of the decisions that came into play. I know that there's been districts across the county and across the state and across the country that have presented plans and preliminary plans We'll be doing that shortly, as well as announcing our formal plan prior to the start of school. So, thought exchange. Let's see if I can find it here. Once again, for anyone who's joining us via YouTube or and the people that are part of the live, all of these presentations, all three of these presentations will be put up on the district website. We'll get that up as soon as possible. It'll definitely be up by tomorrow. So reopening plan, we did a thought exchange. A colleague was using thought exchange and I saw it and I was able to participate in it. And I thought it was a great forum for us as a district to be able to communicate and participate and share what's on our minds. So we had ours open for a week. We had 897 different people put comments in. We had 1,153 different thoughts. So if you were someone who put in a thought, you know you could put in more than one thought. And sometimes when you were reading the thought of others, it gave you an idea of an additional thought that you might want to share. We had over 40,000 different ratings. So within those 897 participants, we had over 40,000 different ratings within the exchange. That's a very large number for a district our size. Oops. One of the things that you pull up from Thought Exchange is they do a word wall. If you haven't seen a word wall or a word cloud before, it pulls up the words that were used most within the thoughts. So there's lots of things that came up and different questions and concerns that faculty, staff, administration, and community members shared within the exchange. The first thing I'm going to share before we get to the top 6s and the top 10s is the divergent thoughts. Now, for you, you're here and you're listening to me, you know what I mean by that. Divergent thoughts are things that had high ratings, but then also things that had low ratings. So I would like to see my child back in school. We all struggled with remote learning, and I feel that even if it's not full-time, it's important to be able to interact. I chose to include the full thought. You can see the theme, but some of our families, I like to see my child back in school, but then others rated that lower, where it wasn't as a big of a concern. So I want them back. I don't want them back. There was questions about drills. What things are you going to put in place? Are you really going to be prepared? And then, so some people had questions and concerns about that, and then others did not rate it as high. Some people talked about who should provide the antibacterial gel and sanitizing wipes. I will let you know that the district has included that in our plan, and we will have sufficient supplies, more than sufficient. We will have ample supplies to make sure that our faculty, staff, and students are able to make sure that they're cleaning and following the CDC guidelines. Compliance with face masks. So people are worried about face masks. Other people aren't as worried about face masks, and routines and policies and procedures. Some people are concerned about the number of kids in class. Some people aren't as concerned about the number of kids in class. Some people are concerned about the routine that it offers if we do a hybrid model where we're part in and part out. You know, other students, some students are more independent than others. Some family structures are different and support structures in the house are different. So when we're in that virtual remote learning, you could see that even in the dialogue and the conversation back and forth, that things were happening and there was concerns either way. Some people were concerned about pass-fail grading and what was happening with that and those expectations. You know, some kids really thrive and those things motivate them, and others not as much. There's this questions of mask again. Masks go back and forth in regards to, oh, how are you going to have mask and how are you not? Masks are scary and masks aren't scary. Little ones, it's going to be challenging. What's it going to be for older ones? Will it be required? That will be all included in part of our final plan. And I can tell you there, it's in the plan already. Half days versus full days and work schedules. We know that it impacts families, not only our families of our children and students that are attending school, but also our faculty members that may have children that are school age. Hybrid schedules are preferable to mask requirements. So like there's a lot of divergent thoughts and competing things that were going back and forth that were rated high and that were rated low. Some people think that we should split the days, right, that they go to school. We think they should reduce the class size. All those things are taken into consideration as we continue to move forward. Right. So the top 6 parent guardian responses. So I'm going to go through top 6 parent guardian and also the staff, and then the overall will be a top 10. I'm not David Letterman, but I'll try to entertain or at least provide some information for everyone. So there's definitely things that we need to do in regards to, you know, fine tuning, and we're getting to the final stages in regards to those protocols. What happens if a teacher, a staff member, or a child or family member tests positive for COVID-19? I know we're seeing that across communities now in regards to what's happening with some of the recreation facilities and athletic events that are occurring, as well as in work environments and what's happening. So that's a big concern. Clear and timely communication. I think one of the things that's benefited me as a superintendent is I've been sending weekly messages to the community in regards to COVID, but then also including other additional information. And I like that format, and I want to continue that even as we move forward. The principals have been providing information as well. There's this concern about actual teaching, right? Making sure there's consistency, and if we have to go virtual and they're part of the instruction occurring from home for a portion of the day, there needs to be face contact. There needs to be some time, whether it's through a Google Meet or it's going through Zoom or other platforms. 4 and 3 are very related. Health of students and teachers. Number 2, safety, keeping student staff healthy. Health, number 2 and number 1. It's all about making sure we're safe and everybody's safe. Faculty and staff. Supplies come up. Make sure we have enough supplies. Supplies can be defined as not just cleaning things and making sure, but it's also manipulatives in the lower grades. So kids don't have to share, even though that's a big part of who we are as human beings. And we want to make sure we share and we do things together and collaboratively when we're trying to decrease contact and between the virus, that those things become really important. We have some athletic practices occurring right now, and there's NJSIA has very specific rules and regulations in regards to sharing bats and balls and other equipment and what you're allowed to do and what you can't. Once again, it's all about limiting that distribution of the contact between the virus. Number 4, safety. Number 3, safe. How are you going to do it? What are you going to do? Student participation for faculty and staff. We know it was challenging. We were lucky that we were able to, and it wasn't just luck. We prepared and we were ready because we weren't sure what was going to happen, but we were able to make sure everyone had a Chromebook for the most part, and then we were able to do some follow through. But because of that, we went home fairly quick. But we also know that parents and guardians weren't prepared to be teachers, right? You weren't prepared to do some of the things that you had to do. And, hats off to everyone that really chipped in to do what we could for our children and our youth. But the reality is the expectations, we needed flexibility in that. And we will continue to need some flexibility in regards to what those requirements are in a virtual learning, a remote learning environment. But it's so important that everyone understands what those expectations are. But we also need to be mindful of what the impact of home instruction has on families and our students. So that's a big piece. Clear directives about students and exhibiting symptoms. I know that some districts are making decisions in regards to letting parents and family members self-report. Sometimes that's because of efficiency matters and trying to get kids in the building quickly. We're having conversations about now, and we're going to err on the side of caution. And our final plan will be out, but we're going to put things in place so we know that the students that are coming into the school are not exhibiting symptoms, as well as faculty and staff. It's just really important to try to keep a safe learning environment. So those directives will be included. Top 6. So it's also interesting to look at the data, and we are, continue to look at it and making sure that all the questions that were in the thought exchange are answered, but also the things that are part of the road back, which is the state plan, is not just covered, just fully considered and understood and implemented, but who will monitor who children and parents are in contact with. Travel, we're all getting caught up in the travel ban, and some different work environments are too, where the recommendation from the governor's office in regards to quarantining and self-quarantining, all those things, every one of those items will be in that final plan. Supplies, remember this is coming up, and they're obviously going to show up in some of the earlier ones. Cleaning and sanitizing daily. What is your plan? We have a very robust plan, and we're continuing to fine tune it in regards to what it looks like to clean our facilities and the classrooms. What happens if there is a report of someone positive in a classroom? What happens if it's multiple students? What happens if it's a staff member? That is all being detailed within our plan, so we know. Health of students and teacher and safety, number 1. Mansion Avenue, all looking at safety, additional support. So consideration for our identified students or special education students, and maybe looking at that population a little bit different in regards to if we choose to do an half in, half out program where they get supports during all of the available days during the school week. Mansion, making sure we're cleaning and sanitizing. So some of you, it'll be in the plan, but we have the availability to use money through FEMA to provide additional custodial support during the pandemic. And that's something that we're completing and filling out that, because we'll be posting potentially for some additional staff and support throughout the school day when students are in session, but then after school to prepare for the following school day. So we are looking at every avenue to get money and support, but then also looking at what we need. And we'll get the questions later, so save the questions until the question part, and I'll be able to answer some of those pieces, and you'll see that as we move forward. And remember, the chat feature is not a chat back and forth. When it's public session and there's an open session for dialogue, and if you want to ask questions, you can. And I'm not reprimanding that person. We want to answer all the questions that we can. Just trying to make sure that when those do pop up, they don't scroll to the top and we don't get to them all. Okay. Safety. There's this part, and I think everyone understands that as you move forward and you look at safety and you look at our facilities, it becomes challenging to do both with every student in the building. So if we're going to a half in, half out type of model to try to make considerations across the grade levels. So that's definitely part of. The high school, they want classroom structure. They want to know what the expectations are for the students, whether in-house. A lot of these go to when you're thinking about a hybrid model. Participation with our older students, what's it mean? They have some ability for additional independence, but we also know that there's parent support that goes along with that. What's the changing of the classrooms look like? You have 800 students about in the high school. If you have all in, what's that look like? Even if you go to 400, what's that look like? So obviously that's part of our plan too. Safety is number one, and then they talk about clear directives and what it looks like. So there's obviously some redundancy. When you look at all, I'm almost done the top 10. So this is top 10. If we were in school, I was going to make a David Letterman joke, but I'll stick to the number 10. How safety comes up, siblings being on the same schedule, cleaning and sanitizing. Keeping, if you go to a half in, half out, consistency. So if my child's going to school on Monday, Tuesday, it continues and there's consistency. Right now, there's some conversation at the state level that these plans that we put in place need to be consistent throughout the school year. I just heard that for the first time today. So that becomes a different conversation before this final plan is out, because we have a model that, depending upon where we are with COVID-19 and the pandemic, that if we have the ability to pull all the students in, that we want to get there sooner or later. But remember, number one is safety. Protocols for positive testing or contact tracing. I speak with the Department of Health probably at least 2 times a week over the last month, and that will probably continue. Safety, number 5. Safety is number 4. Health is number 3 overall. Safety comes up number 2 again. Clear and timely communication was number 1. So I know that person that popped up in the chat, and the other chats coming, really wants to know. I need to know now. I need to plan for my family. I need to plan for my child. So these timelines, this was saved already. So we have some, the main committee met yesterday and today, and we're meeting again next week. We're finalizing some things within the overall plan. We're fine tuning. I don't want to say finalizing. And then subcommittees will be meeting next week, and then we'll also be pulling in the parent group. Right now, it really looks like, based on the conversation, we're going to be talking about potentially doing a formal presentation of the full plan August 5th. So this is already changed, and we're trying to make it timelier and as timely as possible. And then the formal board review and adoption on the August 19th. It will be a living document, and the State Department's aware of that. Actually, the State Department hasn't required board approval, but knowing there's policy and there's schedules in there, it's just good practice to have board approval and not just submit a plan to the county. Also, this plan, when it gets submitted to the county, is a district level plan. So they don't rate it on the quality of the plan. They just rate it on the completeness, that we touched on every part of the road back. So we'll be touching on every part of the road back and more. All right. So right now, this still sticks to the board. I know there's community members who I'll answer questions to, but this part, really, the presentations to the board. So I don't know if the board members have any questions at this time. Excuse me as I grab something to drink. A little iced tea. So board members, any questions in regards to the thought exchange and what was shared and what the top ranked things were and how it's influencing our plan as we move forward?
Andy, my question actually is something that somebody posted here. It was about temperature checks. I didn't see anything on any of that. Is there plans, temperature checking the kids coming in and possibly any visitors, even if they're even allowed in the building?
Yeah, so I'll tell you right now, the preliminary plan includes temperature check for all students. upon entry. We will be limiting visitors, and then faculty and staff will have not definitive yet in regards to checks, but there will be self-reporting on a daily basis in regards to that. Part of the parent piece too will be in regards to anyone who happens to be traveling or vacationing during this time and when school comes back in session. But yes, right now the tentative plan includes temperature checks upon entry.
Okay, if there's any extracurricular activities, if it happens, I guess there'll be the same situation then to anybody entering?
Correct. Right now, and I did share that the fall sports are able to have practice at this point based on NJSIA guidelines. And we are doing temperature checks at all the formal practices.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Andy, I don't have any specific questions about the plan. I'll wait for the official to come out because I know you talked about divergent viewpoints and you're still taking those into consideration. But I just wanted to make a comment about the Thoughtexchange. I thought that it was a great vehicle to collect information. And I was really impressed with the input from the community, from parents, from staff. You know, given the fact that we can't get together in groups and talk about this, I just thought it was, you know, I just was really impressed. And I want to thank all those people that took time to go on there and put those comments in there and rate other people's comments. I think you would agree that it was invaluable when you guys are putting this plan together. So I just wanted to make a comment about that.
Yeah, I would agree. All right.
Andy,
Oh,
let me just real quick, and I know that, you know, hopefully August 5th comes and we have our plan and we're going to communicate our plan. Just want to make sure that part of our plan will include the direction that the school will be taking regarding fall sports. And again, I know that's going to depend on what the plan is. But again, just want to make sure we don't miss that piece. So if there is going to be a change, we communicate that out as early as we can also.
Yeah, I'll point out some things too as we go through the board meeting. But yes, Mr. Gilmer, I would agree. We're following NJSIA guidelines right now, but those guidelines have changed and evolved over time as well. So as more districts come forward with their plans, I will say the majority of the plans, and I'm not saying that's what our plan is, but the majority of the plans or preliminary plans that have been posted across the county appear to be hybrid models where we have half in, half out. There are some districts that are pulling more students in, but when you talk to them, sometimes their facilities actually lend themselves to that. So I love kids. I needed that break, but that's great. Remember to mute if you're not a board member. NJSIA may change where they are right now. Right now, formal practices have been pushed a month. So things that started in August, and don't quote me on it, the date September something, it may be the first week of September or the second week of September, and they're limiting some of the games. And I know Mr. Carbone has been working with the ADs within the Colonial Conference Group to create new game schedules, but those game schedules could change, and he knows that. And he, just like everyone else on the administrative team, and then have been going through lots of plans and been working tirelessly. It's not a normal time for us, but we want to make sure we consider in everything. So, and you go through and you create a plan, and then you need to create another one. So our formal plan, when it gets presented, will have multiple tiers to it. But NJSA, part of it, but there's some evolution to athletics and extracurriculars. I'll try to be more succinct next time.
Andy, I guess that was just my thought too, that, you know, obviously sports is a big part of the school, but there are other extracurricular activities. We have a robust program in the junior high and the high school. So it'll be good to know what the plans are for those other groups, you know, whether or not they're able to meet after school as well.
Right. For the community's edification, and also some of the other board members, we've been working with the union to talk about some of the positions, and you'll notice there's some approvals coming up for some of the positions that are different. We know if we're even in a school closure, some of those activities can happen. Like a chess club could still happen if we were in a full school closure, because you could go through and you could Skype or you could use Google Meet and you could talk about your moves. So those students could still participate in. And there's other activities that can still occur. So you'll notice that when we get down to human resources, some of them don't have the clause in regards to if we have to go into a closure or if the event is canceled. We also know, and we were being very mindful and respectful of the coaches and the extracurricular leaders that do things prior to the season and will be doing things before the start. And we want to make sure they're compensated for their time. And there was things that were occurring. So those things are being defined as well. Any other questions from board members? And I'll remind the public, when we get to the public session, you'll have the ability, and I can answer anything in regards to SSDS and or these two additional presentations. So I popped up another presentation. Like I said, this will be available on the website. This is the reopening plan parent, guardian, and faculty staff surveys. This was just a quickie, right? We wanted to get some information, and then as we move forward with the plan, we'll be asking additional follow-through questions to see where people stand. So when you look at the parent and guardians right now, well, as a close of Tuesday, yesterday afternoon, 42% said they're not sure. Like, I'm not sure if I feel comfortable. It depends on the plan. Depends on what you tell me what it's going to look like. 37% said, yeah, I'm comfortable sending my child back to school. And then 21% said, I'm not comfortable. We need to remember that this is without a plan, right? Presenting a formal plan. So some of these numbers may change. They could fluctuate either way in regards to, I feel comfortable, I don't feel comfortable. This is a breakdown. So to look at it based on buildings, because buildings can change. When you look at a pre-K 2 building like Haviland versus a 3-6 building like Mansion, or a junior senior high 7 through 12, it changes. So when you talk about what you need to do in regards to providing supports for students and their ability to work independently changes. However, when you look at our numbers, there's not a significant fluctuation in regards to where they feel, where the percentages come when you look at the parent group across the board. Okay. Which model of instruction? Well, this is kind of an open question because we haven't defined a plan for you. So for you to make a true decision, but it also was another way to ask the same question to the group to see how that may change. Now, there is a little bit of a fluctuation here when all of a sudden, when you have 39% of the total population saying traditional, like a traditional model, when we're talking about, we didn't have that same amount saying they want to come back, like they're comfortable coming back to school. So sometimes it's how you ask the question. And we know to get a true survey, we're going to have to provide you with a little more detail about what that final look looks like. Okay. Which model? This one I am only reporting because we asked the question, and because we asked the question to the public, you should see what the answers are. You should have availability to the data as well, because there are so many options in here. When you look at what a hybrid model is, well, a hybrid could be multiple things. So how can I even say I want a hybrid? More virtual with the majority out, some of the identified students in. Virtual, everybody out is pretty clear what that means. Everybody in, but everybody in doesn't define whether or not it's a modified day. What's the schedule look like? In person, AB, half in, half out. All right, I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at that one. So faculty and staff, you could tell by the Thoughtexchange, they're looking for clarification. They're looking for additional information. So it's not a surprise that they said 50%. Well, I want to know the plan before I say yes or no. I want to know a little bit more, and I want more information. Same for the parent group. 20% said, I'm okay coming back. 24% saying no. Across the groups, do you feel comfortable returning to in-person instruction in September? Faculty at Haviland, they really want to know. If I was a primary teacher, I would want to know the plan too. There's just lots to consider with our younger students. Our class sizes are good. They fall within, acceptable practices, but that's not in a pandemic, right? And also I would say our classroom sizes are on the smaller size compared to some new schools that have been built. So we have about a good amount, 20 students in the classroom, anywhere from 18 to 22-ish, but it's a small classroom. How do you social distance? And then with other considerations do you have for those little ones? So I am not surprised by those numbers. They're not saying no, they're just saying I need to know more information, right? Falls across in regards to the model, traditional model, virtual model, hybrid model. Probably less confidence within the staff group when you look at what a traditional model could look like, but also we need to define the plan. Once again, when you look at the clusters across the groups become challenging as well, right? There's just a lot to consider. You really need to know the plan before you can make a true vote on it. So with all of that being said, we also have volunteers to sit on committees. Based on the conversation that we had today, the plan moving forward, I know there's faculty members that are interested in this as well. The plan at this point talks about, or the group right now, we have a strong structure for many of the questions, but some of those things vary or fluctuate based on the final plan or plans that we have. So next week, we're doing a lot of pulling all that information together. And then we're going to pull and invite any teacher that wants to be part of the conversation for different subsets of the plan. We'll end up doing Zoom meetings or Google Meets, depending upon who the facilitator is. Obviously, I like Zoom, but if number becomes a problem, I may have to do it in a Google Meet so everybody can participate. But we'll be bringing them in, and the faculty and staff will have a first go around look at that. And then the proposed plan at this point, we have so many parents and guardians that want to be part of the conversation. We will most likely open it up the following week with parent and guardian input in regards to looking at specific areas so they know what's going on. We also realize that's a lot of people that may want to participate and talk about, but we're breaking it down into the subsets and being very specific about the items that we're going to discuss during that meeting. It's very easy to get pulled off track in the conversation about reopening because there's so many things that impact one another. And there's just a lot to consider. One of the things I just wanted to share, because I know people were want to know what things have we talked about, what types of pieces. So this listing of 1 through 9 is not a complete listing, but it's a pretty thorough listing when you think about all the different possibilities that we have during this specific health-related school closure. We started out with an all-out. That is the most exclusive plan that you could possibly do. The next level would be where most of the students out, but we make special consideration for special populations that need to be serviced within the school environment. That was very challenging for some of our special needs students in that population. And we have just students that do attend programs out of district, and some of those out of district programs continued, but some of them stopped. And we know that that's a huge impact on those children and their learning, but then also the family members and the supports that they need. There was a conversation, and I'm not poo-pooing anything right now, so don't think, although my tone may come across that way, I'm not really good with poker face, and I'm very open and honest in regards to that. But like, we had a conversation about early in, so if we brought in half the students in early, and then they also let them out early, so they would have lunch at home. Lunch is a huge issue when you want to try to social distance. It's a huge impact on us in all our buildings. So it's a big piece of the questions that we have. And then you do a laid out, laid in, laid out. That becomes challenging as well, because it's contractual in regards to the teacher's day. And when you do a plan like that, we also want to make sure we can clean in between the student population. Well, that becomes nearly impossible to do it in an efficient manner to make sure. And exposure is a huge question when you consider safety for the students. So then you go forward and you look at this Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday model. Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, AB model becomes a conversation, because if the students don't have as much time in between not being in a school setting. But once again, it becomes a question of exposure and having different groups of students. One of the things that was put forth in the opening plan is to consider that contact, and contact between group and social distancing. Well, that gets very hard to do because you've just exposed some students, or some students were in the building, you did a cleaning, but then you had another group of students coming in. There's also impact on that when you talk faculty and staff and their contact with different students. So if there's a cluster and then there's a student on that A group on Monday that tested positive, or had a family member that was tested positive, and now that teacher was now working with students on Tuesday because we weren't aware of it. And now you've just contacted both groups of students. So the thought of trying to keep them apart just became, crossed out. Early dismissal becomes part of the conversation because of lunches and also supports that need to be in place. So as we go forward and we talk about the formal plan, you'll hear that a lot in regards to why that may be the final consideration. So then you come to number 5, which is a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday plan, where Wednesday, all the students are home. That plan does do really good things in regards to social distancing. The early dismissal helps with lunches and the challenges that you have. Sometimes the challenges for lunches are very a big challenge in the primary grades, but it's also a challenge for the upper grades because of the number of students. So even with 400 and trying to figure out what that looks like, it becomes very challenging. I keep using that word. Wednesday becomes an articulation day. We can do other things on a Monday through Friday schedule, Monday AB schedule, where special populations may be able to receive supports and services. You talk about rotating Wednesdays. That's a potential consideration because rotating Wednesdays mean my child in this week is in 3 days a week, but then the following week they're only in 2. The Monday, Tuesday stays consistent. It's Wednesdays that rotate. That's still a conversation at this point. We know that throughout the Thoughtexchange, it was very apparent that consistency is important across the groups. So we know that's a consideration as well. Number 6 is an AB, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The difference is that's an all-in. That's when, you would be serving lunches and the schedules become more of a traditional schedule. That's a consideration with, once again, a rotating Wednesday, gets pulled into that as well. And number 7 is a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, all in. That one's there just because of number 4. It's would be a consideration. Kind of negates some of the exposure pieces. And then you jump to an all early dismissal program where everybody's in, but you avoid that lunch problem and everybody goes out, or an all in, which we're all used to. The number 1, number 2, and number 8 and number 9 are part of our traditional plans. Well, number 8 and 9 are part of our traditional plans, but 1 and 2, we have to plan for a virtual all out in case that order is put upon schools. So we already know we have 4 plans. It just becomes a question of what's the final. And I just saw it pop up, and I'll answer that question even though I'm not supposed to. But there with any plan that we have, and when we come to a hybrid plan, there will be the potential and the possibility for someone to opt out 100% for virtual learning if you're not comfortable. So we know that will be part of the final plan in a hybrid model. So I did see that pop up. I know I'm not supposed to. I don't want to encourage that. I'm going to leave this up to go back to the board for any additional questions. Remember, this is not a presentation of our final plan or final plans. It's just an overview in regards to the data that we received from some formal and informal surveys from the faculty, staff, and parents and guardians. Hopefully everybody's still getting the YouTube. Questions from the board? Any questions in regards to what I shared? The YouTube's still running. Well, hopefully people got received the text and the email and know to go there. We do have people, but as people leave, I'm letting people in.
Andy, is Bud confident they can get the buildings cleaned, sanitized properly every night?
With an early dismissal schedule, yes.
Okay, that was just a concern.
The Wednesday helps with cleaning as well. You asked a specific question, I'll give you a specific answer.
That was kind of my question. Like Wednesdays could be for like a really heavy cleaning, but if you're looking at doing the rotating Wednesdays, then obviously that might be out the window there.
Correct, correct. Right. And then we also have an early dismissal on Friday, and then we have Saturday to do a deep clean as well.
Correct. I was just thinking in between, you get the kids Monday, Tuesday, then you got separate kids coming Thursday, Friday. That Wednesday could be a heavy cleansing day before you mix them in, the next group. That's all.
Correct.
I mean, they always do a great job, so I'm confident nothing will change there. So, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? I mean, I think it's important for us to have these dialogues. So as far as presentations, I hope people don't find me rude for drinking a little iced tea as we go here. Board doesn't have any other questions. So this comes back, and don't worry, I know the public has questions and you're gonna have the opportunity to pose questions. Some questions will be answered and then others will be tabled and considered in the future. But Mr. Blumenstein, it's back to you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have the approval of our board minutes. So can I please get a motion to approve minutes from the June 10th public and executive session and the June 30th public and executive session?
Motion.
Second.
This is Ron Case. Roll call, please.
Ms. Osinski,
Yes, for June 10th, abstain for June 30th. I was not present.
Okay. Mrs. Shivo,
Yes.
Mr. Whitman,
Yes.
Mrs. Cox,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Blumenstein.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. The board welcomes participation of interested organizations and individuals and has scheduled this time as the appropriate time for the public to speak. The board reserves the right to limit public discussion. Public discussion of a topic will be limited to 15 minutes, and individual speakers will be limited to 5. You can reference bylaw 0167 of the Audubon Public Schools Board of Education Policy Manual. Before we begin, I would ask that all questions or comments at this particular time should pertain to governance, operations, education, or human resources. So questions or comments should pertain to direct items. So if you have a question or a comment, you would say, I have a question or comment about operations number 5. And then we will address that. At the end of the meeting, I know this is probably the first meeting for a lot of people, especially on Zoom. So at the end of the meeting, there will be an open public discussion comment that you can ask any question or comment on that has anything to do with anything. And I think that a lot of you have questions about the school opening. I will make sure that all of those are addressed, but they will be addressed at the end of the meeting. So right now, if anyone has a question or a comment about an agenda item only, they can place it in the chat. They can raise their hand. There's a function on Zoom for raising your hand, or you can email the board secretary, DRoncace, DRONCACE @audubonschools.org. So if you are watching this via a live stream, we are not watching the chat or any questions on that. So you should email Mrs. Roncace in order to get your question or comment in. I realize that the live stream is a few minutes behind. So we will be as patient as possible. Take the time necessary to make sure that the questions come in. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Andy.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, if you have, as Mr. Blumenstein said, if you have a comment and you're currently in the Zoom, if you could raise your hand. Remember, it's agenda items. Raise your hand if you're in. If you're not, and you have an agenda item, like if you're not comfortable with that and you'd rather put it in chat, yes. I'm looking from the bottom up. So the last one, what I'll do is I'll do it to everyone. Open session starts now. So anybody who has a question towards the board agenda item, if you could restate your question now, if you're going to do it via chat, then we can start it now.
Yeah, I haven't seen any questions that pertain to the agenda items. I've only seen questions or comments that pertain to the opening. So for example, Max, Karen C, so on and so forth. You don't have to retype those or restate those. We will address those at the end of the meeting.
We'll just start at the top and go down. Okay. So anybody, I don't see anyone adding anything within the chat after 8:31. If you are live streaming, once again, you can see it on the screen. Mrs. Roncase's emails there, so you can email.
And I made that statement at least 2 minutes ago. Mrs. Roncace, have you gotten any emails from anybody from the live stream?
No, I have no emails.
Okay. And I don't see anyone raising their hand for agenda items.
I think it's safe to move forward for now.
Yeah.
And if for some reason you didn't get a question in, you'll certainly be able to do that at the public participation at the end of the meeting.
Well, sorry, you got my kids.
And before we begin, Dr. Davis already stated it, but I would like to remind everyone that is in the Zoom chat that the chat is for questions or public comments only. Please do not use the chat function to start a conversation with other people or say anything that's inappropriate. If that becomes the case, unfortunately, we'll have to shut off the chat function. So please, only questions or comments that you want to be read into the record at the end of the meeting. Okay, so next we'll move on to governance, and I'll recognize myself to start that off. The governance committee has not met since our last meeting, but we did meet the meeting prior to that and talked about the drug testing policy at length. And I'll speak for the committee. As the rest of the board knows, the committee unanimously voted to not include drug testing in our policy when it comes to prospective employees. We did extensive research, a lot of reading, and put together a summary report that we shared with everybody. So I think that speaks for itself. And we intend to put that policy on for first reading at the August meeting. Now, when we last met and voted on the first reading of the previous policy, the board voted 5-4 in favor of a drug test. So that was the consensus at the time, and we were short one board member. I'll open up to questions or comments. There's no motions. We don't need to approve anything tonight. So at this point, I'll open it up to any questions or comments that any of the board members may have regarding the drug testing policy so that we can get that straight for the next meeting.
So Jim, I have a comment about that policy.
Okay, go ahead.
So when the policy was first considered to be rewritten to include drug testing, I was not a member of the board at the time. So I came in kind of midway, had to learn what it was about, and was kind of on the fence. But your committee did some really great work, research, put out a document that I was able to read through. And I felt that you made a good point with it. And I feel that the policy should remain as it is. So that's where I stand now as someone who came in late to the board.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that and letting all the board members know where you stand on that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Mr. Blumenstein, I have just a couple of comments if I can.
Sure.
Okay. First, I want to thank you and the committee for all the hard work that you did and a lot of the information that you kind of forwarded to us and gave us the opportunity to review it long before we had this opportunity now to shed some comments on it. And again, I do have a few comments that I would just like to mention as we consider this prior to us voting on it. And it's also basically would let you know that I took the time to read that very extensive memo that you sent to us. But again, a couple of concerns and a couple of questions. I know that, one of the things that you guys focused on is that, drug testing is kind of an outdated policy, and it's far fewer employees require drug testing than that do not. And that, the positions that do require drug testing are somewhat different than a teaching position. And I certainly understand that. But I would say I worked for a bank for 44 years. And when new employees came to the bank to apply for a position, they were drug tested before they would be hired. And again, you can say, well, that makes absolute sense because you have individuals that have access to customer records and information, and you have individuals who have access to cash. And therefore, you might want to make sure that you take the precautions and ask for a drug test before you hire those individuals. I can't speak for other companies and other positions, but I can say, you know what, it made absolute sense from a banker standpoint. And yes, a banker is different than a teacher, but what I would say is although working for a bank, having access to customer information, having access to money is certainly somewhat different than a teacher. But I would also say that there is nothing more precious, not money, not customer information. There is nothing more precious than our children. Again, just a personal statement from me on that. Another thing I'd like to bring up is you mentioned that drug testing of new employees would discourage potential new employees from applying at Audubon because other districts don't require it. Audubon does. I'm not going to apply to Audubon. And my thought process is you know what? I'm okay with that. If you, in fact, believe that you're going to fail a drug test, and therefore, because of that, you're not going to apply to Audubon, I think that's a good thing. Again, just my thoughts, and I want to make sure that we bring it up. You also mentioned the fact that drug tests in themselves are not very reliable. Okay, possible. We can disagree with whether drug tests are reliable or not. But then later on in the same memo, you say, you know what, we have existing policies to control whether an individual who may or may not be on drugs, if they are acting suspicious, they're a current employee, we have the option of going out and drug testing them. Well, if you tell me that drug tests are not reliable for new hires, but it is reliable for an existing employee, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, okay? My last comment is I kind of look for somewhat parallel situations. And the one that I came up with is currently, and this has happened to me because I have been a coach for children, Little League, high school, things like that. One of the requirements, if you wish to be a coach, you wish to work with the students, you must be fingerprinted and go through a criminal background check. Made absolutely good sense to me. Now, you can say, well, you know, they're slightly different between fingerprinting and a criminal background check. That's a state statute. You must do it. This is just a policy. And I'm saying, well, you know what? There are some parallel situations. What we want to do is in every possible case that we can, make sure that we do not put our children in jeopardy in any way, shape, or form. So again, it's not an exact parallel, but believe me, if you say, my gosh, we don't want to drug test a new teacher because we don't want to discourage new employees from applying, but, well, you know what? If you are going to coach our students, you must be fingerprinted. Well, then aren't you saying, well, then, yeah, but if you do fingerprint, you're discouraging people from applying to be a coach. So again, there's just some discrepancies between what currently happens, what's suggested here. I'm just throwing out this information because I think it is something that we should consider. I hope over the next month, because again, I understand that we're going to basically vote on this again at our next meeting. But I think look at the information, look at all the information. I appreciate all the hard work the committee did, but look at all the information so that when we vote for what is in the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Sure. If you don't mind, I would like to respond to a couple of your comments that pertain directly to the report. In terms of the testing not being reliable, we had a discussion with our solicitor about drug testing prospective employees. And in addition to research out there as to how reliable these tests are to begin with, one of his main concerns was hiring someone, offering them employment. They have a false positive. We remove their name from the agenda. We tell them they don't have a job anymore. It turns out that the test was a false positive. We took an employment opportunity away from them, and they could, potentially litigate with the school. So he was concerned about that, and we took that into consideration and basically conjoined that and wanted people to realize that false positives are out there. And you're right. There's people disagree as to the degree to which there are false positives. But in terms of a policy already being in place, that would be an employee that exhibited signs that any normal professional would have identified as being not normal, or those people being under the influence. And my understanding is that person wouldn't necessarily they might be drug tested, but they'd also be examined by a a doctor or someone, a school doctor, almost immediately, who would, be able to give their medical opinion about that person's condition at that particular time. So I think I see your point, but I think that in terms of our report, I stand by the fact that, testing a prospective employee and testing someone that everybody witnessed under the influence inside of a building or acted inappropriately are really two different situations. I appreciate your other comments, and I think that we can agree to disagree, some of us, but I'm glad that you put them on the table for us to consider.
Yeah, and I'd like to make a comment, and other board members, this is really your time to have a conversation. I'm a servant of the board. I will implement any plan that the board wants, or policy or regulation that the board wants to put forward. But I will say, in regards to the plus and the potential employee versus present employee, the present policies that are in place, just to review, if someone is thought to be under the influence, we have the ability to have them go out and be tested. They're tested, basically immediately. There's less chance of someone circumventing a drug test if it's happening in the moment. So sometimes with potential employees, unfortunately, you'll see it a lot in education, but based on the information that was shared. But if when you're going to be tested and when you have to go, unfortunately, sometimes people know how to circumvent the system. Obviously, anybody who knows how to circumvent the system, we don't necessarily want as an employee working with our children either. But when you look at that research, sometimes that's what when you're going back and looking at the two, it has to do with being able to circumvent the test versus having an active test in the moment. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
No, that's a reasonable point, but I will tell you, even if the individuals know how to circumvent the testing and get away with being hired when they may have an issue, I'm just saying, that policy, that drug testing policy for new employees is just another possibility of preventing a bad situation and not finding out about something after the employee's been with us for a month, a year, 6 weeks, whatever we can do to prevent a possible problem. I'm just kind of in favor of. That's all. But thank you. I appreciate your thoughts.
I have a comment too.
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
I mean, I'm strongly in favor, as you know, Jim, of them being drug tested. They're not employees yet. If we can prevent a problem, okay, just like Ralph just stated, a month, 6 months down the road, that has cost us more money. Okay, it should be it's a basic test nowadays. I mean, some of the data, 2% people get drug tested. I found articles that stated more than that. 2018, there was 9 million drug tests done for pre-employment. Almost 4.5% tested positive. It's nearly 400,000 people. I looked it up just for Walmart. If you want to become a leader or a manager in Walmart, you get drug tested. And we're making 25, 30, 35-year investment in people. And we all night long, we're talking about safety with COVID, the safety of the kids, the staff members, everybody else. Well, I think part of it, people not being on drugs, is a safety issue too. And there was another thing too. I mean, in the art, and by the way, thank you guys too. There was a very good information you sent out. Something in there with the about different professions having to use force or so that. Well, there's situations where kids are out of control and the teachers got to use force. I want somebody with a clear head. And I don't see how we're held liable for anything. I mean, the solicitors worried about possible litigation. They're not hired yet. They're not employees. Part of the employment process is you got to pass a drug test, no different than passing a physical. Drug tests nowadays are back within 24 hours that are negative. Within 72 hours, they have to send out a second test if they're positive. We don't put them. It's simple enough. You don't put them on an agenda.
Right.
Until you sign a paper. You pass the test, you're hired at that point. I don't even know why it's like a big argument. It's a 30, 35-year investment in somebody around children. And I don't think it's a privacy issue.
I just want to clarify, the solicitor doesn't have a preference either way. The solicitor only provided information pro, information con.
Okay, but there was still a comment made about possible litigation and stuff. I mean, they're not employees yet. They're not protected by the union. I shouldn't say protected, but they don't have union rights at that point. I mean, we're not exposing them. You don't nothing's put out there until after everything comes back, the physical and the drug test. That probably come back all at the same time. So you don't expose the employee or the potential employee. You don't expose the district either. They're professional people. I think 99% of people going for a job are understandable that you might have to get drug tested. That's all I gotta say. So I'm in favor of the policy, but everything else, but unless there's something added with a pre-employment drug test, I can't go for that. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I think, like I said, as far as the committee is concerned, and I think, we all came to our conclusions different ways. And I don't think that there's one thing for any of us that stands out as the main reason why. I think for some of us, it's a combination of a lot of these issues. But in any case, we intend to put out the policy without the drug testing in it, which is, what our committee recommends. And, you obviously can vote it down that night. And if the consensus is to vote it down that night, then, I will tell you right now that I will make sure that our committee does what the consensus of the board wants. So we're only 4 people, talking and meeting. But we're going to put out what we feel is the most appropriate. And if that gets voted down, we will do what the consensus of the board wants us to do. So we, against our own consensus, we'll put out the policy with the drug testing if it comes to that after the next meeting. So
understandable, Jim. And like I said, I appreciate everybody's time you guys did put in. I know you did put a lot of time into that, all of you. So it's just, obviously, we're not always going to agree. We're going to agree to disagree on this one.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate you acknowledging that.
Yeah, Jim, and I'll just end it from my standpoint is, again, I do appreciate all the hard work from the committee, but I especially appreciate the fact that we've given the opportunity here to kind of voice our opinions. And then now everyone has all the information, hopefully, that they need, that they can make the decision that they can live with next month. That's all.
Yeah, and committees could bury this stuff. We could just not allow it to come out of committee, and I don't want to operate like that. I want to make sure that our committees do the work that the consensus of the board wants them to do, even if those people are not on the committee. So I appreciate the time that people have taken to consider these points and give their comments in the open meetings that we're having. So thank you. Does anybody else have a question or a comment?
I have a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, board members only. If you're in the public, please stay muted, and you can have a question or a comment at the public portion of the meeting at the end of the meeting.
I was just going to remind everybody, I see comments going back in the chat. Please save your comments until Mr. Blumenstein opens it to open discussion. And then there's no need to raise your hand at this point because the public session doesn't happen until we go through the agenda. But please be mindful and keep your question in mind. We will address it potentially.
Okay, let me get my agenda up here. So seeing no other questions or comments, we will revisit that at the next meeting. So next, I'd like to recognize Mrs. Cox for operations.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenstein. So we did have a meeting scheduled for July 8th, which had been canceled. So our next meeting will be August 12th. Also on the agenda, if you look at number 10, where we're approving the professional service agreements, on the graph, the right-hand column, the NOR Abilities Healthcare, that should be all by itself. It's not in connection with Corey Mueller. It should just be a individual. So from there, all the way from NOR Abilities all the way down to Behavior Services. That's in its own block.
Yeah, so it's been moved down to the bottom block. So when the formal agenda comes out again.
Yep. So that's it. Everything else is kind of status quo.
For anyone who's in YouTube, there are 10 open seats, and I know people are coming in. I keep letting them in as other people leave. So if you are watching YouTube and you want to jump into the Zoom, there's some open seats.
Okay, may I please have a motion to approve items 1 through 11 under operations?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, may I please have a roll call? Mrs. Ron-Case.
Yes. Mrs. Shivo.
Yes.
Mr. Whitman.
Yes.
Mrs. Cox.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore.
Yes.
Mrs. Osinski.
Yes.
Mr. Blumenstein.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Moving on to education, I'd like to recognize Ms. Shivo.
The Education Committee met virtually on July 8th. Mr. Burke ran the meeting. He discussed the school reopening and the pacing adjustments that they will be doing, adding extra time in the beginning to reacclimate students for being back to school, ensuring that students know how to access and use digital technology for each subject in the event there is another total school closure, building time in for any learning loss, and adding extra time to review material that was taught remotely. Kindergarten through 5th grade will be in September. We'll use the new math resource, Envisions 2020, which they've been titling for the past year, and teachers have been receiving professional development and on. Resources that will be piloted next or this coming school year will be a middle school, 7th and 8th grade math resources. They will be looking at new math curriculum series, Algebra 2, and high school Spanish. And then there'll be various summer committee meetings. The next education committee will be September 9th. On tonight's agenda, there's a motion to approve the tuition contract between Audubon and Mount Ephraim. And Also, a motion to approve the tuition contract with New Jersey Commission of the Blind.
All right,
That's
thank you. May I please have a motion to approve items 1 through 4 under education?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, I just have a comment. I was at that meeting and I thought it was a really thorough meeting about what happened last year with remote learning and what the plan is going to be. And we had some good discussion there. And we also had a really good discussion about school culture, climate and culture, and putting that on our radar. And I'm looking forward to talking about that when hopefully we can get together with a retreat date for August and talk about our goals for the upcoming school year. So, I just want to make a comment about that we had a good conversation about that, and I'm looking forward to talking to the rest of the board about that. All right, roll call, please. Mrs. Ronquez.
Mrs. Shivo,
Yes.
Mr. Whitman,
Yes.
Mrs. Cox,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Osinski,
Yes.
Mr. Blumenstein.
Yes.
Motion's passed.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to recognize Mrs. Davis, Human Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenstein. Let me first say my apologies to the board, but I may have to duck out of the meeting before the end for a veterinary situation. So if you see me leave, I beg your forgiveness and I apologize for having to do that before the end of the meeting. The Human Resources Committee met this evening, as we usually do before the board meets. You can see there are a lot of items on the agenda, planning for activities, different extracurricular functions for the upcoming school year, and then also plans for what to do if the duration of seasons or events don't occur because of the current COVID situation. But the committee does stand in recommendation of those items.
All right, thank you. May I please have a motion to approve items 1 through 18?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'm going to, Jim, I'll add on, Mr. Blumenstein, in regard to the clause that you see up there now was done in collaboration with the teachers union in regards to some of the activities that may change in regards to the duties. And I know Mrs. Davis commented on that. I just wanted to follow up with that and thank the AEA for that collaboration and that support. And our goal is to definitely compensate any of the staff members that have completed work. And we also had a plan for if things were canceled and things were not going to occur. So it was good working together.
Okay, roll call, please, Mrs. Ronquez.
Yes. Mr. Whitman,
Yes.
Mrs. Cox,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Osinski,
Yes.
Mrs. Shivo,
Yes.
Mr. Blumenstein.
Yes.
Motion's passed.
Thank you. Dr. Davis, can you leave participant capped at 99 in case Amy needs to get back in at some point?
Yes,
All right, great.
Thank you.
we're at 92 right now.
Okay, thanks. All right, next I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Davis, for the HIB district report and superintendent's report.
Yeah, the district report in regards to HIBs in regards to July, this reflects any reports that were done. If there's any ongoing investigations, they would not be reported here. So currently, as far as reports that are completed or done. We're at 0. As far as superintendent's report, I believe I spoke enough already, so I'll wait for the comment section.
All right, thank you. Program representatives, I have nothing to report for Ed Special Services. Mrs. Davis, you have anything for Camden County?
Yes, they're having another virtual meeting tomorrow night, and I am signed up to sit in on that.
Okay, great.
And school boards. School boards is continuing to put out a lot of information, a lot of opportunities for us to sit in on, different podcasts, webinars, and things like that regarding things that are extremely relevant right now with the current pandemic situation. So if you have any opportunities to sit in on any of them, I do strongly recommend it.
Thank you. Okay, Pam is not here. And Dr. Davis, do you have anything to report?
AF is, waiting to see where we are. We did not have any formal meetings during the closure, and potentially be meeting again in September.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to board member comments. Do any members like to make a comment? Okay, I would like to make 2 comments officially. I will send out an email to everybody soliciting a date for the retreat. So I'll get together with Andy on that, give people some dates. And in the meantime, if you know there's a week or a set of days that you are not going to be around in August, if you could just email me that and let me know so I could just eliminate those right off the bat, I'd appreciate it. Second, I would like to report out that there will be 3 seats open for the board for Audubon taxpayers. Any resident of Audubon 18 years or older that's established 1 year of residency in Audubon, you need to get your petition signed and submitted to the county office by July 27th. If you're mailing it, they need to receive it by the 27th. Did I get that date right, Mrs. Roncase? It's the last Monday in July.
Correct. They need to have it in the office July 27th by 4 p.m.
4 p.m. So you can.
And it's actually at the Camden County Clerk's office. It's the election division.
So all that information can be found online, and we just wanted to put that on everyone's radar so that you are aware.
And Mr. Blumenstein, I can say personally, if there is anyone who is interested in running, I would be more than willing to speak with them about the process. They can contact me through my school email, and I'd be more than happy to address anybody's questions or concerns.
Excellent.
Hey, Jim, just one question, because I think I'm pretty sure on this. You had mentioned that it can be any resident of Audubon. I believe it can also be any resident of Audubon Park.
Yes, Audubon.
Okay.
Park, Audubon, yeah.
Just wanted to make sure we didn't leave our Audubon Park people out. They're certainly able to run for school board also.
Jim, before we go into public, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah. Let's do that. May I have a motion to take a 5-minute break?
Motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks.
We'll start again at 9:11.
Yeah, I've been Zooming since 5. So to the public, save your comments for a second, and then we'll get back into them as soon as we get back. Looks like oh, Gina's back. I think everybody's back, Mr. Blumenstein.
All right, I'll assume that Amy stepped away for a little bit.
Yeah, I can check.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume she stepped away. I just sent her a text real fast, but
Can I have a motion to open up the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the board welcomes participation of interested organizations and individuals and has scheduled this time as the appropriate time for the public to speak. The board reserves the right to limit public discussion. Public discussion of a topic may be limited to 15 minutes, and individual speakers will be limited to 5. You can reference bylaw 0167 of the Audubon Public Schools Board of Education Policy Manual. Before we begin, can I please have a motion to allow public discussion of a topic to exceed 15 minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll allow public discussion of a particular topic to go beyond 15 minutes tonight. Individual speakers will still be limited to 5. Please keep that in mind. If you've already made a comment in the chat section, Dr. Davis will make sure that your question is answered. You can continue to put questions or comments in the chat section, but please only put questions or comments in there that are meant to be read into the record, that you would state publicly at a meeting in public. You can also email Mrs. Ronquez or use the raise your hand function, and Dr. Davis will recognize you, and you can make your comment or ask your question via the video chat. Dr. Davis, I'll turn it over to you. Do you need help navigating the chat room?
no, I'm going to try to go through the chat. I think everybody needs to realize too, in a board meeting, when you pose questions, most of the time we will attempt to address and answer. In some cases, there's questions that will go and be considered for future consideration. I'm going to attempt to answer some of the questions. I put up the possible plans just because when I look in the chat right now, the majority of the questions have to do with the reopening plan, which is not a surprise, right? Everybody wants to know what's it going to look like in Audubon in September. So big questions, and I'm scrolling down from the top to the bottom. So when I go through, those questions start to, pop in around 7:55. Working parents in a plan. When will the plan be released? The formal plan will be presented potentially on August 5th. It will be released no later than August 7th. It may be sent prior to that, based on the conversations that the main team has already had, and in consideration of some of the plans and tentative plans that people released already. Quarantine information. Quarantine information will be clearly displayed and shared in the plan. That has to do with whether a staff member tests positive, a student has test positive. If someone is in a residence with someone who has test positive and they have contact, I will let you know that the Camden County Department of Health has been very clear in regards to contact tracing, and that they will provide us with the guidance for that. They don't want us as school districts doing that. And they were very clear in sharing with the superintendents that. So there will be a general blast. There's still determination in regards to the legalities and also guidance from CDC and the Department of Health in regards to what those plans will look like. We have obviously a plan in place in regards to lice or bed bugs and what that notification looks like. Because we're a small community, when there is a test, someone is tested positive, the blast will go out to the group as a whole, but the information may not be as narrowed down as you want, but it will be narrowed down as much as we are permitted to. I hope that answers that question. Quarantine, we have that issue now in regards to faculty and staff that are 12-month employees that may have traveled to one of the quarantine states. The Department of Health is providing school districts with guidance in regards to what our expectations are. Although it's a recommendation at the state level from the governor's office, there is some direct guidance that is being provided to school districts. So therefore, that will be very clearly delineated in the plan. I will say, just as a sidebar, as I'm going through this, I would encourage anyone here who's got lots of questions in regards to cleaning and those types of things to jump on the COVID-19 link on the website and scroll down to the bottom. When you're on COVID-19, you'll see our school health related closure plan. It's just a little bit up from the bottom of that listing of every blast that has come from me and information that's come from the district, because some of those things are already in there and some of those things will be part of this final plan that's relayed. So quarantine information will be clearly shared at that, like I said, either August 5th or August 7th date. Sports and contact tracing, once again, that's hit me personally in regards to my own children and some of the activities that they're participating in now. NJSIA has very clear guidance for us in regards to what happens, but that will also be delineated in the plan as we move forward in regards to extracurricular and sports. I know I'm not providing with specific answers that you may want, but those things are still being finalized. And I'm letting you know that they will be addressed completely. AB groups, we are counting up. We talk Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday in regards to plans. There's someone made a comment in regards to national holidays that fall on Monday. We do have a tentative schedule change for to be presented to the board. Potentially that would happen on the August date as well, just so that the plan is in place and the board approval piece is there. But we really want to start a little earlier with in-service days for the faculty, which will push the starting date for students. Once again, families will be aware of that early. There's a question about choicing opting out. I already answered that question, but for anybody who joined the Zoom late, potentially in the plan that's being put forward now, or within the plans that are put forward now, for those parents that have the ability to, and also the desire for their child to be homeschooled or virtually instructed, not homeschooled, remote learning, a virtual instruction for the full week, that will be part of the plan. So parents will have that option in the proposed, the plan that's being developed. So. Lunches, as I shared earlier, are one of the biggest problems besides social distancing with the number of students and within the size of our schools and the size of our classrooms. Lunches will be provided and available. Where and how those will be eaten and the location where they'll be eaten will be defined in the plan. There's questions about Audubon Park. Yes, we do still have a lease with Audubon Park, and there is some consideration in regards to moving some students there to decrease the class size. There's questions about the format. The format is set forward in, and I shared earlier, and I'm sharing it because I know there's people that just came in late. We have had lots of discussions, and the Health-Related Closure Committee has been part of these conversations. We want to not finalize, but formalize some of these pieces prior to bringing it forward to the teachers, and then also bring it forward to the parents and guardians. Because just as you're asking me questions now, some of these I can answer point blank, but I don't want to, because I want to do that in the formal setting. But the reality is, when you look at the plans that are possible for us, there aren't, it starts to get limited fairly quickly. And we know we already have 4. It's the 5th plan, or the 5th plan with a twist, that people really want to know about. There is consideration in AB days, if we go half in, half out, and trying to coordinate that between families across the schools. We know that there will be some potential errors when we do the initial, so there will be some flexibility to move those around. Once again, our consideration is in regards to the number of students in the classroom and the number of students in the school at any given moment in time. So there are potential issues for us in the high school just because of the way the schedules are. And there are some conversations in regards to really raising the rigor for all our students and pushing some of those options up towards those honors in college and career readiness, and not limiting the number of some of the courses. So some kids and students that did not have the opportunity based on prior parameters may actually have the opportunity to participate in some rigorous classes. I think you all know I don't like to hide from questions, and I like to give you the information. There's questions in regards to what I'm looking at is keys. Keys becomes a question if we're on an early dismissal schedule. So that's still under consideration and it's still being discussed. We are going to be reaching out to some other facilities that handle student before school and after school care, and can see keys is definitely something that we're considering how to implement and whether we will be able to implement with what the final plan is. Answered that one. I'm at 8:35 now, so I'm just scrolling down. Siblings, I answered. COVID, I answered. I answered voice virtual. Someone asked if there's other schools in Camden County that have released. There are school districts that have released plans. I know that Cherry Hill had a board meeting yesterday, and they put forth 3 different plans for each of the grade levels, but their plan is not finalized but each of those plans consider an AB day. It's the number of days students in or out. I know Pennsauken released a plan. I know Collingswood has tentative plan. Indirectly or directly, as you're sitting here listening to me try to answer these questions, you can see where we're leaning right now. And some districts would consider this announcing the plan. I'm not saying that because there's questions that we still have. We would like to get the number 9. You know, everybody would like to get the number 9 where everybody's all in. But the reality is where we stand, and the initial committee and where we're working before we pull in some teacher, additional teacher, and then we bring family members, and then also considering all the information that we got from the Thoughtexchange, that number 5 is looking pretty strong. But I am not saying that is the final plan. There's talking about the celebration of the class of 2021. I believe that's class of 2020. I know tonight there was an activity out on the soccer field, and I know that they're going to be borrowing some chairs from and tables from the district for an event that's going to be occurring on Merchant Street. We'll still be having some additional conversations and potentially reaching out to see if there's other pieces that we can do. Yeah, so they're talking about childcare. Becomes a struggle, but it's definitely part of the conversation in-house for families that have, they might be an essential worker or have a different position. The problem with any plan that we move forward with is the fact that we have to really think about what our end goal is. And safety came across very clear. And then the CDC guidelines are very clear, and the Department of Health guidelines are pretty clear. And the road back that was issued from the Department of Education is pretty clear. So sometimes providing support within a school setting becomes very challenging. We haven't passed that hurdle yet, but we are still considering how to help. I'm at 9:14-ish now. It goes back to confirmed cases. I believe I answered that. Oh, I scrolled backwards, sorry. Someone asked about positions on the board. We have, but every year, 3 seats are open. We're talking about the extension of the school year in a virtual model where instruction is occurring both on-site and then remotely. The school year would not necessarily be, increased. There is conversations about masks and shields. I know, and I think I need to talk. I need to answer these. Masks are the #1 recommendation from the CDC. Face shields don't do the same piece. There is conversation in the plan, making sure that faculty and staff have shields, and then potentially students in the primary grades, and then maybe students that have other special needs. We need to understand that if you're within, and it's the CDC, this isn't the American Academy of Pediatrics, CDC guidelines speak to 6 feet. So if you're within 6 feet of one another, you should be wearing a face mask. One of the things I appreciate about the community is how thorough and thoughtful you are in regards to the question. So there's some people noticed on the agenda, and Mrs. Davis and I both commented in regards to some of the extracurricular activities that you saw. Some of them had that caveat in regards to whether or not there was a cancellation of the event and or if there was virtual instruction occurring. So that's true. There's also some that were just straight approved. Well, there's some things that can occur in a remote environment. The chess club could still occur and those students could still meet. There are some other pieces that we push that we would normally, many of these things would have been on the June agenda. We pushed some of them to July. We have now also pushed some of the items to August. So there are some other agenda items that will show up in August. Some of them will be straight approvals and others will have that caveat if there was a cancellation. There's obviously conversation between the administration and the teachers union in regards to those events and which ones we feel could continue and how they would continue. So you will see some additional events that aren't occurring. We wanted to make sure all the sports and athletics that potentially started, the fall season things started, were on the agenda. All right. All right, I have to go back into the, I think, I don't know if there's a limit where I answered them all. So I think I have everything. Subs traveling between buildings becomes a question. We are actually sending out our sub survey tomorrow or Monday to see which subs are returning. I will tell you that the superintendents across the county have concerns in regards to substitutes. Many of our substitutes are retired teachers. Other substitutes are retired professionals, and they may or elect not to. So that becomes a question, and it needs to be part of our plan to make sure we're able to provide supports and services and instruction if a teacher is out. Okay. Right now, I mean, there's questions about special ed. I said it a couple times already in regards to, right now under the current possibilities, we are considering that population to be a 5-day a week as opposed to a 2-day, 3-day, a 2-day in, 3-day out. And it's a different group of students, and they have different needs. So I'm looking right now. I think I answered hopefully most of those questions. I don't know, Mr. Blumenstein, if you saw anything I missed. I'm looking in the chat right now to see if there are any more. The last one I have is a 931. So
Andy, there was a one part of the question that hasn't been asked all night. I did say it was missed.
You want to repeat?
It just it says, has there been a consideration given to outside space with tents or canopies or something to that form?
There's been some conversation regarding that. So I'll just say it that way. It's been discussed. It was actually discussed earlier today. Again, but it was as recent as today. So right now I'm looking to see. Oh, we have some hands that are raised. So I'm going to go with Steve first.
Wait, I do to stay on the same topic because I think he's changing.
Okay.
Topic.
Thank you, Mrs. Ronquise. Any additional questions in regards to this school reopening plan? Okay, great questions.
Oh, I did. No.
State, you can, if someone just unmuted and they want to make a comment, just state your name and you can ask.
Roxanne Apicella.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple, comment/questions. As far as the substitute teachers go, I've been one in the district for 4 years. While I don't plan on being one this year, in the past, I understand the traveling back and forth between buildings being a problem. But the other thing that I found as a sub is not being notified of procedures. So when you send out the survey and you get people who say they want to be back, it would be really helpful to at least notify the subs of what's going on.
Sure.
And I'll tell you examples, the safety issues. I would just show up for work and it's like, oh, here's a fob and different things like that. And one building, had doors locked and the other one didn't. And it's very confusing, but that as far as the sub goes. My second comment is, given the restrictions, and I know we're all hoping that we can do things in the fall, is the school prepared to get the extra equipment or buses if we are transporting students? Marching band, that's where I come from. According to the guidelines, we're going to need more than 2 buses to get our kids where they're going. I don't even know if we're going anywhere, but my question is the school looking into that? And being able to offer, or are you prepared to offer extra stuff if we need it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the plan will be, that's part of the discussion in regards to, and I know this is turning into dialogue and board meetings don't typically go that way, but I think it's appropriate for us to talk. We actually have 3 buses. That'll be consideration in regards to that. There's conversation across the county in regards to what transportation looks like. And I'm going to answer another question in this question because someone was talking about flexibility in plans. So there's potentially some additional guidance in regards to what those plans look like and how long they have to stay in place. You know, our goal is to get to number 9 if we're able to. So we want flexibility in that plan, but we also know that we have to present a plan that's straight. So yes, there is consideration in regards to extracurricular and transportation, and then also making sure that we're in adherence. There is recommendations from the CDC in regards to that. I will tell you across the county, it becomes a little bit challenging because there's some documents that talk about a 54 passenger bus only having 11 people on it, including the driver. So you're saying 10 students. That becomes very difficult to do. Across the county, we get to make our transportation plan. So extracurriculars will be part of that. The county's basically talking about, and we like to do things consistently in Camden County, where you limit it to 1 student per seat, and then PPE is worn. So now you have 27 as opposed to 27 students and a driver versus 10. But remember, safety is always our first consideration.
Okay, I don't want to assume anything, but are extracurriculars included in the PPE?
Yeah, athletics has PPE requirements right now. So
no, are we going to be provided it? Am I going to have to take that money out of my budget and purchase PPE for the kids?
Oh no, so we have it. We have PPE already in our budget and in our plan. We actually have a PO out already, realizing that we would get, well, at this point, 1 mask per student per week. It doesn't sound like that's enough, but the reality is one, if you're doing the disposable, the 1 a week, 1 a day gets astronomically high, but we will have them available, and extracurriculars are part of that.
So they're getting 1 mask, is that it?
1 mask per week is what's currently slated.
Okay.
That may morph because that conversation's still occurring, well, whether we purchase washables, but that's conversation's going.
Okay.
All right. I don't want to get it into a true dialogue. So additional questions?
No, I'm just concerned about also the timeline. It's, we're getting very close to the start of school. And according to the governor's recommendation, he said 4 weeks. So even if this is put out on, we say August the 7th, is school now starting September 7th?
It's 30 days from the first day that students come. Mm-hmm. So potentially our due date based on a change in calendar would need to be to parents by the 9th. We would do it at least by Friday, not on a Sunday. And then we're trying to do it on the 5th. So we'll be within the governor's guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
And if we can do it sooner, we'll get it out sooner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting the arts.
12 years now.
All virtual, I answered already. We did the Monday. I'm trying to jump down to the 10 new ones.
I think one question is if you're doing all virtual, somebody asked about all in option. Like, I guess
all in is not currently an option. I see that, and we're going to take this the questions that you have, because I did not see that in the Thoughtexchange, but that's something that will be brought back to the committee. They're talking about essential workers, and whether or not they will have any additional consideration in regards to their days. Becomes challenging with the number of students in the classroom. We'll get back to drug testing. I see there's a question there. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, before we move on, I see, people's comments and questions are still streaming in. I think what I would recommend is that Dr. Davis will or has recorded all of these and will take all of them into consideration when he issues his report on August 5th. And a lot of questions here just simply can't be answered in detail tonight because the plan is still being put together. Is that fair to say, Dr. Davis?
Yeah, I think some of the things are redundant, and most of the pieces, if not all, have been considered.
Yeah. So
I'm going to move.
Yeah, we're going to move from that topic. Does anybody have any questions or would like to be recognized to have any questions or comments on topics other than the school closure?
Well, there was the question about the drug testing, right?
Yeah, I know Steve has a question, but I don't see him right now. And Mrs. Ronques, if you, or Mr. Blumenstein, if you see, I don't see it in the chat.
I thought he was raising his hand.
He did have his hand up, but I don't see him in the group right now. There you go. You can speak.
Good evening, guys. I don't know if this is working or not.
Yep,
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So in regards to the drug testing, I already spoke on how I feel a lot about this stuff. And am I understanding this correctly, that we're concerned about being sued because of false positives, and this is the driving factor of why we're against this?
No, that's not correct.
Okay, because I saw that was one. Well, I heard that was one of the things that came up. Sorry, this has been a pretty long meeting, and some of us wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day, so I'm a little tired. All right, so but to address the false positive things, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do 2 types of drug testing, where you can do a hair test and urinalysis. I'm also curious what the percentage was of false positives. I just don't get why would you protect an addict or somebody who is responsible for our kids' health and safety? I can't think of a good enough reason. I don't want to hear privacy. I mean, it sounds like you guys are afraid of the union, which, I mean, let's stand up here. Look, everybody can do what they want to do. Like I'm a big advocate of that, but there's also consequences for that. So you want to do drugs, then you can't teach in our district. And I don't understand why that is an issue. If I have a baby that's going to be coming through the school, I want somebody safe and sober in charge of my child's safety. If let's say there's a catastrophe, a fire or a shooting, I don't need somebody who's high trying to protect my child or not protecting my child because they're high. I need to look out for the best interest of my kid. So I don't understand if it's a cost because of what tests cost or percentages or privacy. It's all nonsense. And I think that you guys might be either scared of the union or scared of the negative opinion from the public or something, but let's go. Let's do the right thing here. If you got to be drug-free to do probably 70% of the jobs in this country, then you should have to teach. And I'll go even further. So if the people on the board are going to be making decisions, then maybe the board should also be subject to drug testing. And I don't say that like accusing anybody of anything, but I mean, if you guys are going to be the people who hold the community to certain standards and teachers to certain standards, then the standards need to be across the board. And it's aggravating to me. I need to know why somebody like kids will look up to adults and teachers, especially because they're exposed to them every day. Why are we not looking for the best of the best and trying to weed out any kind of dangerous for the kids, like any kind of bad examples? why are we protecting this? And on that note, I'm going to end it there because I'm aggravated and I'm also a little tired. So I'll just listen from here out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your comment.
So right now I'm looking to see if there's anyone else who has their hand raised about a comment. It's open. We can stick.
Along with my comment, there were some questions in there that I think probably needed a better answer than thank you for your comment. Like I had some, if the answers aren't available now, then that's fine. An email would be acceptable, but I feel like there were some other things that I had touched on that thank you for your comment is just not the acceptable answer to be blown off.
Well, with all due respect, you were privy to the discussion that the board had. Different board members have different opinions on this, and when the policy comes up, those board members will be able to vote the way in which they would like to vote.
What did he do? I know, right? Blah, 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 right? Because you haven't talked to him in a while.
He started getting on the.
Ms. Apicella, can you please mute yourself?
Sorry.
Those board members who wish to have their comment be heard public had an opportunity to do that during our discussion on the governance committee. At this point in time, no board members will be making any comments regarding that. That was the time for them to talk about it. You can shake your head, but this is the way that the board meetings operate. And I am not going to answer your questions on behalf of myself. I only speak for the whole board, which disagrees. So it would be unfair for me to answer any of your questions related to that and give you my personal opinion, which you already heard in the open session. So I apologize if you're frustrated, but this is the way that our board meetings operate. And I will leave it at that.
So right now I'm looking to see if there's any other participants that have a question or comment outside of the reopening plan. If there is anyone that has comments or questions in regards to policy 3160 and 4160. It's not 15 minutes yet. You can, if you have other topics or any other question that you may have, you can raise your hand. Right now, I'm going to look in the chat to see if anything else came up. Not seeing anything yet. Once again, if you'd like, you can email Mrs. Roncase.
I did have two questions that came forward, but they were both answered. One regarding the parent's choice about doing in person or virtual. And that was already answered. And the other question was about the KEYS program and if it will be running and when they would find out about it.
Yeah. So that would happen prior to that announcement. The KEYS employees would know. We would want to make sure they knew if we weren't going to be able to do that prior to the public notice. There's a question about graduation. The administrative team erred on the side of caution or did not hold an in-person graduation, but there was several things that were done. And I did make a comment earlier in regards to project graduation. I know they hosted an event on the soccer field this evening, I believe. And then there's one that they're hosting or potentially hosting a prom on Merchant Street. I'm just going to read the comment from Ms. Kunkel in regards to she wants to add to the comment in regards to the drug testing. If you didn't see it in the chat, just that she likes to reinforce that it's absolutely mandatory for anyone in contact with our children within a school should have to be drug tested. Right now, I'm looking to see if there's any other open comments. I'm looking right now in participants to see if anyone has their hand raised. I don't see any hands. I see a comment just popped up. Yes, the goal, it's a question back to the reopening plan just about families. The goal is we're going to cross-reference if the final plan is an A-B schedule to make sure siblings in different schools are on the same days. We know that there are potential errors, so parents will have the ability and guardians will have the ability to let us know if there is, so we can make a correction prior to the start of the school year. Once again, I'm looking in the chat to see if there's anything else. I'm going back to the main group to see if anyone else has their hand up. Oop, we got another chat. There's a question in regards to preschool. So these are reopening plan questions. Mr. Blumenstein, I'm going to answer it. It has to do with preschool. We will be holding a preschool disabled program. Potentially students, we will have general ed students participate as well. There is some conversation about eliminating that. I know some local districts have chosen just to hold preschool for the special education population. That's still in discussion whether general ed, but preschool disabled will definitely be occurring. I do like the fact too that community members are starting to feel comfortable with me. I appreciate that. So I do have, I want to check my email real quick, Mrs. Duranquis, because I did get a couple. This is a one in regards to essential workers. So I will bring that back to the committee. And then an earlier email, I believe I answered all those questions. Remember, try to send them to Mrs. Ronquis. It's fine. I will forward them to her so they're part of public record. All right. I do not see any more questions. I do not see any hands raised. I checked my email, Mrs. Ronquis.
I have no further. I do believe one other option or a chat just came in.
Yeah,
I answered that.
Oh, you answered that one.
It's an opt-out question. The virtual instruction in the current plan that's being considered, it includes the possibility for a parent or guardian to choose to have their child virtually or remotely instructed for the full school year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least for the full part of the plan. Change will be defined in there. There's a question about change, and I think this will be the last one in regards to reopening. There's a question about changing. We're going to get some further clarification from the county and the state in regards to changing plans. We wanted our plan to evolve and also be adapted to the current situations, always trying to get to the bottom of these options so that the least restrictive environment is in place, and considering safety as well. Okay, I think we're good. Last chance for any questions outside of reopening. And I'd say that too for the drug testing, 3160, 4160. Any other outside questions outside of those two areas? Appreciate the thanks. All right, Mr. Blumenstein, I think we're good to go.
All right, so our next meeting, the definitively is scheduled for August 19th. We may schedule a meeting for August 5th. So we will list that appropriately when the time comes. So can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
You know.